My late grandfather, an Ondo man from Okegbogi compound in Ondo State, was a revered Reverend Father of the Anglican Communion that traversed the whole of Western region back then. His sojourn in line of work brought him to Abeokuta, where he met and married my grandmother of the Deke family at Ikuruake, Abeokuta. This is the basis of my dual lineage of an Ondo man and Egba man. My late father, Prophet Olujimi Timothy Fashui, resident in Ibadan, retired as a higher executive officer at the then Nigerian Cocoa Board, Cocoa House, while my late mother, a trader, Oluyemisi Fashui, hails from Abeokuta. I was born at Lafia Hospital in Ibadan. I am the first of only 2 children, the other being a girl, now married. I grew up with my maternal uncle, late Mr. Adekunle Ladende Esquire, who was then an agricultural officer and later a divisional officer at Ugumosho during the Western region days. My uncle, an Egba man, was a strict disciplinarian. His wife, a midwife then, likewise trained us all on strict moral standards. I will share some of my learning experiences with them in the course of my story. I started my primary education at Bodija International School and completed it at St. Benedict's Private School, Ibara, Abeokuta, where my uncle was transferred to Ogun State after creation of states in the 70s. Then to St. Leo's High School for Secondary, Ogun State Polytechnic for A-levels, and University of Ilorin, where I obtained B.A. Hans degree in Performing Arts. Growing up was memorable and indeed indelible. From early days at Old Bodija, Ibadan, where streets were paved, neat clean gutters and drainage systems, security guaranteed, even with low fence and no barbed wires. It was then considered uncultured to speak across fence to your neighbors. Notable places then were Palm Chemist, Keba Chemist, KS Motel, Cocoa House, Agodi Gardens and Zoo, Premier Hotels, Rotunda, and a host of others. In those days of strong values, our normal day usually will begin with bell ringing by Daddy, my uncle, for prayers. Songs from hymnal books, psalms from Bible were sung and recited off heart. Till date, I can still read Psalm 23, 121, 122, 103, 91, and some others from memory. Then, everyone had a car to do before school. Everyone was trained to write with Ami, the foundational phonemic notations of Yoruba language, which is Doremi, and speak in Yoruba language. Proverbs, idioms, witty sayings, storytellings. Alo, alo. Oruku tindi tindi tindi, oruku tindi tindi tindi, oruku bimo, gbogbo ọmọ ẹ̀ ló yàjẹ́ o, kí ni o? Pardon me as I won't be able to translate this in English language, but it suffices to say each story then ended with a lesson in moral and conduct. It is strange, therefore, to know that majority of families nowadays train their children strictly on English language and eroding our cultures and traditions, all in the name of westernization. This is a tickling time bomb. Values inculcated in us were good character, good name, discipline, integrity, truthfulness, cleanliness, hard work, dedication, loyalty, God-fearing, sound education, and responsibility. I remember a day I was running late and dressed up for school without doing my morning course. As I prostrated fully, saying, Udabosa, meaning bye-bye, sir, Daddy asked, have you done your course? In Yoruba, I couldn't answer in the affirmative. He then asked that I should go and remove my uniform and perform my duties, and that when I get punished for lateness in school, next time I'll learn to wake up earlier and do my course. This taught me how to be responsible and time conscious. I remember another incident of my goose. My uncle requested for a glass of water. 50-50 calls it. Half hot water and half cold water, making it warm water. As I dashed from his front, I accidentally kicked or brushed his leg while leaving. He called me back and instructed me in Yoruba, Lo mu adawa kowage itakun to fese ko lenkan, meaning go and bring a cutlass, machete, and cut the tree roots you kicked then. I turned to leave, only to realize my goof of not apologizing when I kicked his foot in error. I quickly prostrated and said, "Sorry, sir." That was courtesy lesson 101. And never forgot the incidents and lessons, using an idiom for corrections. Wow. I remember the good old telephone always under lock and key. I won't disclose some naughty pranks we played to dial numbers without opening the padlock. God help you if you are caught in the act. Your punishment will be near capital. I recall my uncle had tools of various artisans. We repaired minor things ourselves. Hammer, nail, saw, crowbar, shovels, plumb, ladder, plumbing machine, a toolbox for screwdrivers and paint brushes. We actually painted part of the house once. He was a hands-on man, a life skill I possess till date. Memories. What of dress code? Everyone must tuck in their shirts going out, neat and ironed. No collar flying. Hair must be cropped neat at Maridoti Babas, Makola. But what do we have today? Nudity has replaced decency. Now we glorify Yahooism as a profession. Drugs and drunkenness proliferate and rule our world. Mentorship gone to the winds and lawlessness now order of the day. How did we get here? Growing up, our orientation of sound moral values was right, and it has helped me later in life to mix freely with people of diverse cultures and traditions. It is the same values that has helped me in my passion, drive, and calling into integrated development communication initiatives, where we use arts as a tool for advocacy and education for attitudinal change of various publics. This is a clarion call, a call for us to revisit those old-time tested values of integrity, discipline, patriotism, hard work, dedication, humility, good character, and high moral standards. It is time for us to call the emerging generation to borrow a leaf from our past, when there was dignity in labor, honesty, perseverance, and belief in God, who is the author and finisher of our faith. Let's shun tribal sentiments and embrace religious tolerance. Hunger does not discriminate. You are uniquely made. Nigeria can and will be great again if we all do the needful and stop the blame game. Let us ask ourselves one question. Am I truthful and honest in my dealings as a parent, government, or a businessman? What legacy are we leaving behind for our children? They deserve a future that is greater than our past. We owe them a duty to lead them right. Nigeria needs an urgent national moral rebirth to galvanize credible leadership and responsible followership. Therefore, I join Sir Shimore Badejo on this noble initiative to say there is hope for Nigeria still. Our good old days can be a foundation for a better tomorrow. Let's do our bit to make our country great again. Long live Nigeria. Thank you.
Child protection is an ancient, long-standing problem which has gained the attention of the international, national, state, and local communities, with governments, international donor agencies on the forefront of a high-profile commission to eradicate it. The unique dynamics of child sexual abuse such that it's often committed in secrecy, with only the victim and the perpetrator as witnesses. And it's a crime that is very difficult to detect, and it takes a long time before the abusers, before the crime is revealed. And the grooming strategies of the pedophiles include: number one, engagement of the child, overcoming the child's resistance, inculcating secrecy into the child, intimidating the child, suppressing the child to maintain control over the child. There are 5 key steps you need to know as an adult, as an educator, to be able to provide child protection to any child within your vicinity. Number one, you need to learn the facts. Child sexual abuse can be contactual or non-contactual. It can involve actual defilement. It can involve exhibitionism, touching a child inappropriately, or exposing the child to pornography. And you need to know the different ways children disclose. They can disclose to you directly if they trust you, but even in that, they may not give you the full details. Then there could be accidental disclosure in normal day-to-day conversation. Then there can be indirect disclosure. The child may pretend that it happens to another child because it's ashamed. He or she is ashamed and should be shamed and should be blamed. And then you need to reduce the opportunity for it to occur. You don't leave children alone physically or digitally. These days the world has turned to a global village. You need to monitor their internet spaces. You need to know about digital empathy as an educator. A child may be innocently browsing to do the homework, and the pornographic site may drop in, and the child will be ashamed to seek for help, which may traumatize the child. Then you need to know children's digital footprint. You may give your child a name and get another name online, on Facebook, TikTok, on Instagram. And then you need to know how to talk about a sex education. You don't wait for a child to be grown. From age 2, you tell the children about their private parts. Call it the way it is. Tell the boy, this is your penis. Tell the girl, this is your vagina. Don't call it wee wee bum bum. Don't give it names, because a lot of children will be taken advantage of. And then you know these pedophiles, they crack risky jokes and say, my wife. They dabble into favoritism. They can be treating the child as an adult. Then you need to reduce the opportunity for it to occur. You need to learn the signs. There are short-time signs like bruises, wounds, rashes in the mouth and the genital areas. You see teenage pregnancy, unwanted pregnancy. You see sexually transmitted infection. But the long-term consequences that schools of thought and adverse childhood experiences is what is affecting the nation as a whole. It's the children that have been abused that did not receive help, that are in conflict with themselves, with the society. You see suicidal addiction, you see depression, you see poor interpersonal relationship skills, poor academic performance, occupational failures, compulsive eating disorders, hormonal imbalance, infertility. You see depression, post-traumatic stress disorders. And above all, you need to know how to react responsibly. If a child confides in you, you don't react vehemently. You don't go and confront the perpetrator. Otherwise, you contaminate evidence or endanger yourself. You need to know about the Lagos State government witness protection policy. You need to instill confidence in the child. Tell the child, thank you for telling me. Psychological first aid. I'm sorry this happened to you, but I need to help you. And you don't ever promise a child, I will not tell anybody. But you need to tell the child, number one, we need to get you medical attention for medical treatment and evaluation. And number two, you need psychosocial support because you are traumatized and none of any families are traumatized. And then we need to inform law enforcement, the police, because pedophiles are criminals. Their security risks, they need to be taken off the streets. They will not pose dangers to other children. Access to justice is part of the healing therapy. And if both parents are not able to support the child, let the child know you need shelter services, safety plans. You need to be relocated from the offending environment to regain your sense of safety. We have the very first children's telecommunication number, 0800 801, through which children can call to receive professional counseling, information, care, emergency intervention, and referral pathways. The Lagos State government is committed to ensuring child protection. We have the Quality Assurance Department of Ministry of Education. If it happens in school, we have the Ministry of Youth and Social Development, who are interested in the welfare of the children for placement in shelters and orphanages. We have the prosecutorial unit, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. We have the Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency, with a formidable interagency collaboration among all the agencies. Our belief is that adults are responsible for protecting children, not children protecting themselves. Children cannot protect themselves because of their cognitive and vulnerability. And there's no way a child can give his or her consent to sex. And there should be no shaming and blaming. And it opens the door for pedophiles because there are no benchmarks or indices to identify a pedophile. Pedophiles' strategies include earning the trust and respect of parents. If a child is hungry, they offer food. If a child is lonely, they offer companionship. They are like the wild animals in the safari who will study the children to look for a loophole in that life of that children, fill that loophole to maintain control over the child. Some even blame the child, it's your fault. It can never be a child's fault. And a child is anyone under 18 years of age. It doesn't matter if she's already in the university or she's big or whatever. Every child needs protection. Every child is important. Not just our biological children, not just our students, even our domestic staff. They need to be protected. Defilement is life imprisonment, sexual assault by penetration. It's about 7 years. We have a range. Touching appropriately, we have 1 to 1 year, 3 years, depending on the offense that can be established. But the rock bottom is that child sexual abuse is unacceptable and it is preventable. No longer should we allow perpetrators to go on with impunity. And no single agency can do it alone. We need interagency collaboration, the support of community-based organizations, religious and traditional rulers, all to ensure child protection.
Increase the reach of your events or business services. To advertise on Plus TV Africa, please call 0906 000 5719 or 0909 040 8408 or send an email to marketing@PlusTvAfrica.com. Plus TV Africa. Big stories live here.
From north to south and east to west, life in Nigeria has become dangerously unbearable. The country is faced with what seems to be endless waves of homegrown security threats and violence. Nigerians live in fear, from terrorism to kidnappings, armed banditry, farmer header clashes, ethnic violence, and separatist agitation. To better understand the causes of the unrest, as well as the true agitations of the people, Searchlight travels across Nigeria.
The bandits, I use the dark place, the forest place, to hang around. When our drivers reach there, they will come out and start shooting them.
In fact, if I can give an estimate, I can say that in a week we used to treat not less than five gunshots.
Look, people living under siege.
Now, Owerri is too hot.
No rest of mind. To see for anybody.
If you sleep now, sleep with one eye closed, one eye open. Be vigilant. This is Igbora for you.
Igbora is one of the 7 communities that make up Ibarakwa land.
Ibarakwa land comprises of Igongon, Erua, Ayete, Takpa, Idere, Lanlate, and Igbora in Oyo State, Nigeria's southwest region. There is a long-standing history dating back to the early 20th century between settler herders who are mostly of Fulani descent and local farmers in the Ibarakwa axis. Recently, however, coexistence has become increasingly problematic as the communities are now plagued with kidnappings, farmer herder clashes, reprisal attacks leading to the forceful ejection of Sarakins and Fulanis in the area.
I have been back home here in Igbora since January because of the armed herders and farmers crisis that has been rocking nearby villages and farms. Although the Sarakin Fulani of Ngongo, Salihu, was evicted in January on accusations that he was helping evade justice, not much has changed. There are still incidences of kidnappings and attacks on farmlands.
This is Shekere village in Igbora.
We live in fear. Had you come earlier in the day and could enter the farm, you would find their cattle eating crops, and when confronted, they attack the owners of the farm. If perchance they meet a woman unaccompanied on the farm, she could be raped. There is no safety on farmlands.
The nomadic ones are moving around. The residential ones, we know them. Some of the residential ones are still within the community. They are peaceful. One incident occurred when our people they are outraged and they burnt all the Karas in the whole Ibarapa land, even that of Erua. In the border here now, there is no Kara again.
If you had burnt all the Karas in the whole of Ibarapa land, I want to think that Kara is a place for residential Fulani.
No, Kara is a spot, a market for them to come and buy and sell.
So you have burnt.
Do you know? Come,
their economic spots.
Let me tell you some things about that Kara. Some things we discover about that Kara, especially that of Igora here. That spot is a spot where they do hide their ammunitions. And in the night like this, they will pick up those ammunitions, go out, kidnaps, rob, anything they can do. And when they come back to town the following day.
Kabir, you've done a lot of work out of the Ibarapa land. What did you see? What do you know? Can you share your first-hand experience?
Not just in Igbora, not just in Lanlate, not just in Oyo State, but from my experience across the Southwest states, I realized that most of the killings, the kidnappings being perpetrated are being done by the Bororos, who are mostly referred to as foreigners. Some of these Bororos, they come into the country through Benin Republic, some through Cameroon, and you get to realize that in the essence of it all, some through Niger, that many of them are not the traditional Fulanis. And the reason is this. We've had cases where traditional Fulanis, those who are Nigerians, some of them who are from Kwara states, also alleged that they have also been kidnapped. They've also been victims of the attacks of these persons. Most times, those that perpetrate this they don't even have any cattle. All they have is gun, sword, and other weapons.
The violence doesn't end there. Nigeria is faced with the Boko Haram insurgency in the northeast, banditry in the northwest, armed separatist agitations in the southeast, amid communal clashes in the Middle Belt, southwest, and south-south. Increasingly, violence between herders and farming communities is spreading from Nigeria's central belt southward, while kidnappings are rife nationwide. What exactly led to this?
When you see a failure of this scale, of this magnitude, and spread right across the country, the first thing that comes to mind is that somebody somewhere who has responsibilities to secure Nigerians has failed in their duties. There's no other explanation for this. So we have a country that is poorly run, poorly governed, and therefore unable to master the requirements of securing both citizens and the country itself. That is the first one. The second one is that there are a lot of opportunistic criminal activities going on. People understand the weaknesses, they perceive a weakness at the level of the state. They think the state is weak or the state is incapable of protecting citizens from all sorts of attacks, bandits, kidnappers, insurgencies, insurrections, secessionists, irredentists. All these people actually exist because the state has not been able to assert its obligation and responsibilities to protect citizens. And they are emerging and increasing by the day. The third one is the failure of the Nigerian elite to get together and demand that the Nigerian state does what it's supposed to do. The leadership does what they are supposed to do, that is to protect citizens. The voices that are supposed to be heard are not being heard. Too many people are quiet, either out of fear or because they think that they are not likely to make any impact if they don't raise their voices.
Traveling by road is now an extreme sport. On our trip to Kaduna State, we drove along the Kaduna-Biningwari Road. The 123-kilometer road trip seemed easy enough, but we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. From Buruku village, right on the outskirts of Kaduna, there is a fully armored vehicle with soldiers who lead drivers 3 cars at a time from Buruku to Odoa town. This stretch is considered to be the most dangerous. Drivers have to wait their turn as they stand no chance of traveling safely to and fro Biningwari without these escorts. From Odoa, the journey to Biningwari is considered safe from the kidnappers and terrorists, whose victims are not just travelers but also villagers and farmers in and around this long stretch of road.
Our major problem in this area is insecurity. These terrorists have wrecked our town and destroyed our source of livelihood. Nobody sleeps in this town anymore. We take refuge in the neighboring community and come here every day at 8 or 9 a.m. and then leave at 3 or 4 p.m. Look at me. I'm the village head of this community. I used to own a car, but these criminals made me sell it to pay ransom for our children. I can't estimate how much we have paid to bandits as ransom because this community has been attacked more than 25 times.
We have a lot of problems in terms of insecurity on our road, more especially in between Burku and Udawa. So we have a lot of insecurity. We have only one vehicle, which is mobile police. They are the one escorting our members to carry them to Burku. Let's say from January up to now, at least we lost more than 30 of our members as a result of the bandits.
Forests in Nigeria are now hideouts for cattle rustlers, highway robbers, kidnappers and terrorists due to the absence of state capacity or political will to exercise control. From Biningwari Forest in Kaduna to Rugu Forest in Katsina and Zafe in Zamfara, these forests are now referred to as ungoverned.
Arena is in Niger, Shiroro. From there you cross over to Folware.
What security measures have we put in place for farmers and the indigents that are easy prey to these bandits?
Well, I have explained to you that Kaduna is very vast. The state is so huge. We had over 46,000 square kilometers. And I have also explained to you that we are having this problem mostly in locations that are remote. You know, boundaries with Niger State, boundaries with Zamfara, boundaries with Katsina State. You know, the locations are very remote. Even if there's a distress call, before you get there, it takes you time because of the terrain, mobility problem. But the Air Force is complementing the ground troops and the police as well. Once we receive a distress call from a location that is very far, what we do, the Air Force move while the ground troops and the police form a blocking force, and it is really yielding positive mark. We don't have enough boots on the ground. There's a need for us to scale up recruitment. There's a need for security operatives or our security agencies to outnumber the criminals. We are not relenting. We are working and we are making progress. In the first quarter of 2021, we were able to neutralize 64 bandits.
Our schools, just like our roads, have become hotspots of violence. Across northwestern Nigeria, from Zamfara to Kebbi, Kaduna and Niger, about 1,000 students of primary schools, secondary schools and even universities have been kidnapped since December 2020. Most have been released after payment of ransom, while scores are still being held in forest camps. Some of these students have died in captivity and some killed during the abductions. Earlier this year, after the kidnapping of students at Government Science College, Kagara, Niger State, I asked the governor, Malam Abubakar Sani Bello, if a state could guarantee the safety of school children.
No one can guarantee that unless we have the numbers, the manpower of security personnel required. The Niger State, for example, during the military administrations, Niger State had 14,000 policemen. Today we have 4,000. Same Rafi local government where this kidnapping took place, Kagara town itself has less than 10 policemen. So how will it work? How? What magic could you do? We don't employ or employ policemen. I understand in the past, the state police command had the powers to employ policemen from the states, but it is no longer like that. And that's probably the reason why we're having problems.
That was back in March. Not much has changed since. Many have said that the present centralized structure of the Nigerian police is too detached from local communities. A vote conducted by NOI polls indicates that many Nigerians are in favor of state policing to bring security closer to the people. Experts say there is a need to reflect on the current security approach across the country.
The various institutions need to sit back and, reflect that the current approaches that we are deploying to address security concerns, are they adequately addressing these issues? What are the intelligence mechanisms, that you need to put in place to really get information on how crime, is happening across various communities? So I think critically it is the model. It is the approach that seems to be a bit defective. We are practically waiting for violence to happen before we then react. We talk about community policing, especially for the police especially. I keep making reference to the police because they have the mandate when it comes to internal security. Community policing is very important. Then intelligence-led policing. We are not emphasizing that so much. Intelligence-led policing is that strategy through which you just want to get intelligence of what is happening in a certain community.
In the southeast, insecurity takes a different dimension. According to authorities, agitators for the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, a separatist group campaigning for Biafra independence, have been responsible for a spate of attacks on security forces and innocent people since December 2020. Olu, a local government in Imo State, has become a flashpoint of trouble in the region. On the 25th of January 2021, many Hausa-speaking traders in a market in Olu were going about their business when gunmen invaded the area, killing some and setting shops ablaze.
It is very, very unfortunate that this kind of thing would happen in 21st century Olu, 21st century Imo, 21st century Nigeria. People are not happy with the things, with the way this country is being run. When you talk about security, there is no security in Nigeria anymore.
We are here at the Islamic Central Mosque, Amafeke, and this is the third Friday without holding a Jumat service here because of insecurity issues. There is a lot of apprehension amongst the Muslim community.
This is my third year living in Olu, and I have never had any ugly experience living here until recently. During the NSAS protest, they burnt our mosque and killed some of our members in some part of Olu town. For 3 weeks now, we have been unable to observe our Jumat prayers in this mosque. We now live in fear. More worrisome is the absence of security operatives in the town. Despite all these incidents, the governor has not visited us to assure us or condole with us.
Since the January attack, Olu has had no peace. The people are in constant fear as these gunmen, time after time, unleash violence, destroy shops, kill, and even behead people in the community. In the southeast and south-south regions at large, dozens of security officials have been killed. Biafra agitation and the violence going on in the southeast have been said to be an untoward way of expressing dissatisfaction about leadership failure on the part of all tiers of government.
Well, I feel that there are many voices in the conversation to deal with the disaffection that people have about the Nigerian state. There are many voices, and evidently his is just one of those voices. But that may not be the optimal route to go. There are so many benefits of a functional, democratic, sound constitutional state. But where there are imperfections, you will now begin to see the voice that Nnamdi Kanu echoes or propagates. War is what is most paramount. No society can develop without peace. And in terms of the disaffection of those of us who are from the southeast goes, there's a need to hear us and to look at our grievances and to consider them on their merits.
The Southeast substantially mirroring Boko Haram. We have not been able to understand and deal with the issue of IPOB. The Igbo leadership allowed IPOB and ESN too much ground to take too much ground to control what is going on in the Southeast. So they misread the threat of organizations like IPOB. There was opportunism, crass opportunism. People thought maybe this IPOB will do for us what we want. They will get for the Igbo what the Igbo didn't get through the political process. And eventually now we are creating a monster. And it's a monster that is eating up the local environment. The same way Boko Haram ate up Borno and Yobe and parts of Adamawa. IPOB and ESN are eating up the Southeast. The federal government is throwing the military at them the same way they threw the military at Boko Haram rather than trying to understand the real issue. What is behind IPOB? Who supports them? Why do they support them? What is the issue that has made IPOB attractive to a large number of young people? Can you do something about it? Is it something you need to do about it?
I would say that the Southeast governments can do a whole lot better. The state governments, they can do a whole lot better in delivering services to the various constituent parts of the Southeast. We don't see enough of government in our rural communities, in the local government. We need to raise the bar as per the effectiveness of subnational entities. All right. Once we've gotten to a point where we can say for certainty that the state governments are operating optimally and delivering their own share of the governance dividend, then we can look elsewhere to seek inputs. But state governments in the southeast need to up their game.
The Nigerian police force, on whose shoulder the responsibility of protecting the nation lies, is unable to perform its basic functions, forcing the Nigerian military to step in.
A society gets the kind of police that it pays for. Over the years, successive administrations have not made the connection around policing and development. So they just see the police as, oh, that is the police, and not critically putting it in a position of primacy, because people need to be safe internally first. You need to take care of the internal enemy before you begin to look at those ones that are threatening you on the outside. So over the years, there's been consistent underfunding, which is very, very critical. You want to undertake police operation, it has to do with funds, it has to do with state-of-the-art technology, equipment, and all of that. And then the manpower, less than 400,000 police personnel currently police a country of over 200 million. So what it means is that there is inadequacy somewhere. The police right now is overstretched. The country is very big and diverse. And then if you look at the scale of insecurity that is happening, it changes rapidly. So what it means is that the security landscape is not constant. You understand? So the police is trying to really grapple with all of this in the midst of very meager resources in terms of training, in terms of equipment, in terms of manpower, and every other thing. Government's approach in trying to address some of these inadequacies by the police has been to set up committees, police reform committees. But the question again is that each of these successive government that comes in set up a committee, do they make reference to the last committee to say, okay, what did my predecessor, found when he talk about policing challenges? How can I build upon that and actually implement this to make the police effective? But no, our approach has been that, okay, I get into office and then I'm setting up my own committee.
Though the carnage isn't over yet, in more recent times, the joint military effort of the Nigerian Army and the Nigerian Air Force has recorded more success in combating terrorists and criminals.
In the last few months, the synergy and jointness among the three services has been cordial and overwhelming, which has resulted in the decimation of most of the criminal elements we have in this country.
While Nigeria may or may not reform its police soon, critics say the new conception of security now places emphasis on human and non-military variables, saying even the best of soldiers and policemen may be unable to maintain security in a country with a whopping 33% unemployment rate. Nigeria cannot solve its insecurity problems in isolation of other developmental issues. Where we go from here depends on our ability as a people, a government, and a nation to make the urgent steps needed to pull our country, Nigeria, from the brink.
It is engagement.
On the button, send my children to school.
A consultative engagement.
No any tangible notification before they ban us.
It's one thing for people to be at your back and the heat of the moment, and another thing for them to still be with you when push comes to shove.
"60 Minutes with Angela" starts right now.
Executive Vice Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, Babatunde Rukera, joins me on the program today. Start with one of the complaints about your commission, the slow reaction of the commission to complaints from the public. I mean, people saying that they're sending petitions, but they don't receive any response, and sometimes no updates at all. A lot of complaints about time. So people go online, file the complaint, they get the tracking number, but they don't get the feedback from the commission. What is your response to that?
I think generalizing response complaint is not entirely accurate. In the first place, the vast majority of lack of response that we receive as complaints are tweets, and mostly by people who would say, "I tagged you on a tweet," or "I slid into your DM." First, there are tweets that are addressed to us, and then there are multiple thousand more where we're just tagged. And so our resource allocation, like anybody else, would be to focus on what has come to you. And so if you're complaining to MTN technical support and tagging us, the first expectation is MTN would sort the problem out. So imagine if we were both opening tickets to fix the same problem. It's not efficient, and we don't have that type of resource. And so significant, by far the vast majority address, which is catch-all. Many people think that that is a complaint portal. It's not. It receives all kinds of things, intel, even spam, junk, adverts, all kinds of things. Indeed, you're right that there are a few number of people who would say that even though they went on the appropriate CRM, which is the complaint resolution mechanism on our website or through the app, say that they haven't received a timely response. And those would be the ones to say that, well, they do have a case ID, it's been ticketed, but they just haven't received the response. The way this thing works is that we're not sitting here and just literally determining what happens in each case. At the end of the day, the real resolutor of a complaint is the provider. And we don't have a warehouse or inventory of the things people are displeased with. And so the first thing is to engage. And what we've done is we engage the providers with the dissatisfaction of a consumer. Many times the provider quickly addresses the issue, agrees on the results. Sometimes the provider even disputes the issue, in which case there's some back and forth before you come to a resolution. And even in that back and forth, sometimes you might resolve in 30 days, some 60. Some haven't resolved in 180 days. Some haven't resolved in 9 months.
And the reality and the truth is some will simply not resolve administratively. And so there are different buckets for that. Another reason sometimes for the delay is complaint resolution platform is something we created ourselves at our own cost. And over the years of using it, we've been able to onboard many companies. So the usual suspects are all onboarded, meaning that we give them a spur for them to plug in. For the companies that are on the platform, when the complaints come, we're able to quickly push out to them and say, we're waiting your response on this, and we're able to monitor that. But some of the complaints are against companies that are not on the platform. And so we're going to have to manually write the snail mail, use a courier to send it to them. They would manually respond. And so that takes time. And for those ones that are not on the platform, we don't have full visibility other than manual follow-up. For the ones on the platform, you might ask that in that case, why don't you have all the companies? It's not practicable to have all the companies.
Can you mandate companies to join the platform because it's a consumer issue?
We will get there, but it's also a tricky issue because there's a cost associated not to us, but to the company. Some of the companies are in business, they're small businesses, they don't have that whole infrastructure or technological apparatus to even be able to plug in to a system where the integration would work. And so it will take time for us to be able to get to a point where we can mandate companies of a certain cadre. Because what we want is to impose an obligation on companies to resolve the complaints, not impose an additional cost, which could end up hitting the consumers in prices also. And so it's very tricky, and we're managing it the best way we can, but we're monitoring it very closely to see how to use a regulatory framework to guide, even if not compel, more companies to be onboarded on the system. And to onboard more and more companies also is a cost implication for us, because there's a scaling up, and we have to continue to allocate resources to expanding the technology to scale up for the sheer traffic that comes with that.
All right, so I'm taking you back now to July this year, 2023. The elevator malfunction at a general hospital in Lagos, which resulted in a downward crash and the death of a female doctor who was undergoing, I understand, housemanship. What is your commission doing about that? You know, it's very worrisome that it appears that when events like this happen, we never really see the conclusion or the completion. You know, is it possible that your commission can hold someone responsible for that incident?
The nature of our work sometimes is catalyzing others to do things or improve systems or processes. So it's not every investigation that means there's a bunch of documents, a stack of information coming to the FCCPC, people sitting in hearings. Sometimes our investigation is just to even look at processes and assist other entities, especially government bodies, to optimize their own oversight. And for instance, in the example you make, we issued a joint statement with LASCOPA, which is the Lagos State Consumer Protection Agency. It would be duplicitous for us to keep an open file when we have a sister agency in the state working on it. And the state itself, including the governor, immediately took control of the process, identified the company, blacklisted the company, consequences for even the internal folks who are supposed to be responsible for monitoring. And so our role is to make sure that is happening and to monitor how that ends, to see if new SOPs with respect to, for instance, elevator installers and elevator maintenance and periodic checks. And so our own quality control of that is when I'm in Lagos, if I'm in an elevator, I'm looking at the elevator to see if there's now a sign that says last service on this day, when the next service is. So that's our own surveillance to make sure that we're protecting people through the work of others. We've seen some process modifications that Lagos State has initiated, including transferring some of the responsibilities into a more integrated system where a facility manager is responsible to the installers and outside contractors are now responsible to a resident facility manager for public offices where you have things like elevators or other equipment that are supposed to ease the life of consumers, but they can also potentially be dangerous.
Because it's very scary. You know, in most of the hospitals, for instance, after surgery, people are moved through the elevators from theatre down to the wards. Yes. And you know, I can't even begin to fathom if that sort of thing happens with, you know, someone coming out of surgery.
I think that was an extremely unfortunate accident, and it's one of those accidents where globally was needless and avoidable. Nigeria not being an exclusion, but we should be grateful that there were not many fatalities at the end of the day. Very sad loss to the country, to the family, to the government of Lagos State. But we should still be grateful.
Will anyone be held accountable?
Well, there's already an accountability framework that has kicked in. For instance, that business is not going to be able to do that type of work for perhaps an important client. Again, yes. And that blacklisting for any responsible private business would obviously be concerned. Yes. I mean, if I were a large building contractor and I have a contract to build a high-rise, I'll be very concerned about engaging that particular contractor to install the elevator. So there are already consequences. With respect to remedies for the injury that is seized with that, and so our role here now is monitoring. And in the event that a resolution at the administrative level is unsatisfactory to a party, maybe the family of the deceased doctor, if they come to the FCCPC, would see there's still an administrative role we can play in ensuring a fair outcome. And of course, there's still the court system, which I believe is still the final arbiter anyway.
So we move now to the Federal Capital Territory, where we are in Maitama General Hospital. The Commission has begun a probe of the hospital for allegedly rejecting a lady who needed medical intervention after an incident where I think she was thrown out of a moving bus. They say that they rejected her for treatment at the hospital, resulting in loss of life. What are the salient facts that you can share with us regarding that case?
What we know so far from the information we've gathered is Miss Greatness Olorun Femi was a victim of criminal conduct. She is otherwise known as One Chance. We've seen evidence that she was, first of all, physically assaulted. The evidence of physical injury on her body, and she also sustained additional physical injury when she was purportedly thrown out of a moving vehicle. I think that those facts are well established. There is evidence that she was transported by Good Samaritans to the Maitama District Hospital, which is a public institution. There's evidence that there was some interaction there. And there's evidence that that's where she was declared deceased. There's evidence that the Federal Capital Territory, through the Office of the Secretary for Health and the Environment, got involved very quickly, and there has been some initial investigation based on its oversight and supervision of the public institution. There's evidence that there are others who have gotten involved, including the Leadership Association and the Personnel Management Association that Ms. Oluwafemi belonged to, who have also engaged in some information gathering at Maitama District Hospital. There's evidence that the police has opened an investigation also, and all of this evidence comes together. The mandate secretary for the Federal Capital Territories Secretariat for Health Services and the Environment issued a statement and noting that they were engaging with the FCCPC. We've since discovered that they've opened up a probe and there's a panel, and the FCCPC will be participating on that panel. We understand that there's been some discussion about an autopsy and then coroner's inquest. The FCCPC will participate in all of that. And so there's some leadership for key elements of all the relevant issues with respect to this incident. And so what the FCCPC will be doing is participating in all of this to ensure that, one, the key responsibilities of each of the entities conducting those investigations, they follow through that. And then secondly, what are really the key mandate and responsibilities from an FCCPC standpoint that might not be the subject of responsibility by those other entities. We bring it to that table to make sure that ultimately it's a very robust investigation and all the issues are addressed. It serves no purpose for multiple investigations to be going except in some very limited circumstances. This doesn't present one of those circumstances in our opinion with what we've seen. But if for any reason the totality of an existing investigation in terms of reference will not sufficiently address what is important to us, we will do a different investigation, which will at best be supplementary. But the fact that we will be participating in an investigation is already sufficient evidence that what is important to us will be addressed in that investigation.
That brings me to the main point for the question, which I would like you to clarify. Is there any law that prevents a suspect or an accused person from receiving medical treatment, even if he or she is a suspect in an armed robbery case?
Absolutely. There's a Victims of Crimes Act that was passed in 2017. The Healthcare Act states that, and in addition to hard law, which is this pieces of legislation, there are all kinds of protocols, including the Patient's Bill of Rights, which is something that was created by the FCCPC in collaboration with many stakeholders, professional associations in healthcare, the Ministry of Health, and it clearly states that. And the Patient's Bill of Health is something that has been domesticated in many hospitals across the country and was adopted by the federal government. And so there are more than enough instruments to hold anybody accountable, to at least make it abundantly clear that the requirement for emergency medical intervention is superior to any law enforcement investigation into the circumstances that led to injury. Even when it's a perpetrator of a crime that is brought to a hospital, there is an obligation for emergency intervention to save lives.
Because you really want to treat the perpetrator so that he can be punished later on. I mean, there's this perception that because he's an armed robber, he doesn't deserve treatment. I don't know if that's the perception you get too from what we read in the papers.
First, having a perpetrator alive is an important aspect of credible and successful investigation. And secondly, as a matter of law, you don't know for sure what bucket that person who's been injured would fall into. I mean, determining that someone committed a crime is a legal conclusion that follows very, for non-lawyers, a complicated pretty broad process.
Yes.
And so you must proceed from that assumption that somebody is injured. We do not know for sure what the criminal status would ultimately be or not. And so everybody deserves emergency medical attention.
Join us again after the break. Welcome back. And I'm glad you mentioned the Patient's Bill of Rights. What should every Nigerian know about this bill?
Well, every Nigerian should know that all the rights iterated in the Patient's Bill of Rights are an obligation that is owed between the patient and healthcare facilities. And that the Patient's Bill of Rights is not just one document that spells out the obligations both ways, but it's an aggregation. So at itself, it identifies the parameters of the interactions between healthcare providers and the patients, but it also is an aggregation. Each of those rights there, it's aggregation of each right that exists in other instruments, whether ethical codes, law, decided cases, legislation, subsidiary legislation or regulations. So it's not aspirational, it's not CSR, it's not a corporate social responsibility, it's mandatory obligations. However, the Patients' Bill of Rights also has some obligations for patients and their families also. Some of the experiences healthcare providers have had with respect to injury and even their own security in the place of work has been aggression or violence by patients or their families. And so there are obligations for patients and users of their families also in the Patients' Bill of Rights. And even though there are rights that say that emergency intervention must be provided without delay, there are also obligations on the patients that as soon as possible make arrangements to pay for the care you have received. So the Patient Bill of Rights is actually a balanced aggregation that secures patients, other users, their families, healthcare workers, for instance, even visitation rights. Because how one patient or families or friends of one patient behaves could impact the security, the safety, the satisfaction, the peace, and the comfort of another patient. And so all of these things come in the illustrated version of the Patients' Bill of Rights.
The Bill of Rights is displayed in the hospitals that have domesticated it.
Yes.
Will it be mandatory for every hospital, whether private or public, to domesticate this bill?
It is not mandatory at this point. Yes. There are many competing interests and questions, legal some of them, on whether you can make that mandatory, including the nature of government, the dichotomy between state and federal government, and what the constitutional provisions are about the role of the state, the local government, and the federal government, and what it can mandate and not mandate. But I think the traction that domestication is gaining would lead us to a point where we can build consensus between the federal, the state, and the local government, where we might be able to have some guidance that cascades all the way down to make it more compelling that the vast majority of healthcare facilities have it. One of the things we've discovered with the Patient Bill of Rights is that what we're now doing with domestication is that wherever we go for domestication, we go with a team. So the domestication is not just a ribbon or tape cutting event, it's now a training event. Because we're discovering that sometimes some people in the healthcare providing side are learning of these rights at the same time the patients are learning. And I'm not necessarily talking about the physicians, but other people who are in that value chain. The security personnel, and there are all kinds, even other types of healthcare professionals who their roles are critical to the fullest respect for the rights of a patient who are not aware of those rights.
I want to talk about loan applications now, and the Commission banning some and approving some. I was surprised to find that over 154 companies have been granted full approval. That's what it says on your website, which tells me that, is it that some may have provisional approval? Are there some with provisional and some with full? And what's the difference?
And so some apps are approved conditionally because they've complied with all the requirements as a matter of principle, but awaiting other approvals from other regulatory authorities, which is more a matter of administrative. So for instance, if your software has been analyzed and the security is fine, but you are awaiting the administrative write-up of that, and we have that evidence from the other regulator, then you have a conditional approval. And so to the extent anything that is not necessarily within the control of the applicant, if they've done everything within their control to be able to operate safely, then they could secure a conditional approval. Otherwise, full approval means everything has been checked out. Now, our approval is not a license as sector regulators issue licenses. So it's not a license like NCC would issue a license to telecommunications companies, or CBN issue a license to banks, or NRC issue a license to electricity companies, or NCA to airlines. Our approval is to check certain elements or parameters of consumer protection. One, that you have a policy that prohibits inappropriate loan recovery or balance repayment methods, which is critical, and that you have a framework, a feedback framework for your customers to even reach you and dispute whether it's a loan balance or whatever. Two, that the technology you're using now prohibits access to people's private information. Three, that the data management regulator is satisfied with your data policies, your storage mechanisms, your gathering mechanism, and your policy with respect to sharing and transfer. So that's not anything we do. You get that satisfaction from the Nigerian Data Protection Commission. Your software is not something we look at. That's for NIDDA to look at. Then you assure us that you do not compound interest. Now, with respect to the interest on your loan, we're not a prudential regulator. Yes. We do not have the expertise to manage interest rates. And so, essentially what we're saying is that the basic principles of fairness and ethics in lending, you've either made declarations to comply with that, or you've shown us material that shows you intend to comply with that. That's what our approval process is. And so people erroneously think that we have now become the regulator of the interest rates, the technology. No, we can't do that.
So since the Commission stepped in, has the Commission received reports of any more incidents of, those phone calls they make to friends of the person who lent money?
Yes. Now, I would say that that is probably from the successive interventions, starting, I want to say that was last year or maybe end of 2021 when we opened the investigation. Between then and now, I'd say this is reduced easily up to 90%. But there's still a 10% out there that we're battling and trying to resolve. I mean, it rose again about June, July, and then we engaged again and developed additional regulatory tools.
Yes. What caused it to rise again?
Several things. One of the things that the macroeconomic factors always increase borrowing, and so the very important policies that the government had to implement to rescue and even strengthen the economy, which the government has repeatedly said it recognizes, are hard decisions, had downstream effect on cash flow. So whether it's a removal of subsidy or a closing of the multiple foreign exchange windows, they have downstream impact on disposable income. And so whenever disposable income becomes impacted, people are likely to borrow more. And then there was also what I think rogue businesses who had started figuring ways to get around the new regulatory framework. And that's globally typical. Over a period of time, rogue businesses will find the gaps in the regulatory framework. And what the regulator must do is also step up and plug those gaps. And so between, now we've been able to plug more gaps. We've seen a reduction. We continue to work to keep reducing this.
I'm sure advocacy is one of the things that the Commission does. And that's what brings me to this topic now of the tomato mix matter. It would seem to me that there is a lacuna. Retailers who think that they're doing the consumer a favor and that you ought to be grateful that they're manufacturing anything at all. And then buyers who think that the customer is always right, irrespective of the unreasonableness of their demands or whatever. How can we reconcile these two positions?
I think the dynamics of managing a successful, profitable, enduring, and most importantly, responsible business actually address the different pieces of what you've said. Now, the customer is not always right, but is king. And so when you say the customer is king, it's more about how you treat the customer. It's not about taking the validity of what the customer says as correct. I mean, if someone says to me, adding 5 and 5 is 11, it doesn't matter what they're buying. So the customer is king. It's about how you treat people. It's not about taking their word for value.
Yes.
That's a very important differentiation. And you're right. I think successive years of military rule has affected the mindset of people. And so it's not even just in retail. Generally, people who are paid to perform a service, even in government, feel that what they have is power.
Yes.
And so how they exercise that power, even for the benefit of the beneficiaries or the focus of the power, is a matter of benevolence for them. And that's not the case. I mean, any business that sells anything, the purpose of that business is created to sell that thing. If people don't buy it, there's no need for that business. And so for any business that does that, to conceptually in any way consider itself as doing a favor to the consumers hasn't passed the test that I said for a business to be profitable and enduring. It must be responsible. And if the business is irresponsible, it's only a question of time. It may be sooner, it may be later. It cannot endure. It just cannot endure. And consumers must have the liberty for feedback.
So it is not against the law for a consumer to give a review of a product that they've purchased.
Not only is it not against the law, businesses and we regulators beg, beyond encourage, consumers to provide that feedback. I traveled and arrived last week. I've gotten one email from the hotel I stayed and multiple emails for the different segments of my travel from the airline, asking me to review my experience. That feedback is one of the most important components of any robust consumer protection or rights enforcement framework. As a regulator, not only do we encourage it, we must protect that channel. Consumers must feel comfortable. And that's the reason why we responded strongly that this could potentially chill the channel or diminish the channel or that platform. Secondly, it's important to businesses and to us as a regulator because that's where products come from. That's product development comes from feedback. Product modification and improvement comes from feedback. We as regulators have an interest in making sure product continues to be developed or improved for the satisfaction of consumers because that's our business, right?
Yes.
Okay. And safety, all of that comes from that. And so it is one of the most important things, and businesses need it also. Regulators need it, businesses need it, consumers need it. And consumers need to help each other by reviewing products so that they can drive traffic to the good products so the products that are not good can get better. That's really how it's a complete ecosystem where review is at the heart of it. And so not only must we encourage it, we owe an obligation to protect it.
I'm so happy you said that because many people are confused about the role of the police in arresting someone who reviewed a product. I mean, when it's not a criminal case, and I know because you're a lawyer, you will understand what I'm saying. A person reviews something on social media and then the police are invited and the person is whisked away. Are there any remedies available to the reviewer who was so arrested?
I think we're not addressing the fundamentals of how society operates. I said this not now as a consumer protection regulator, as a lawyer and a litigator prior to this role. There is a tort which is recognized as malicious prosecution.
Yes.
Okay. Now, malicious prosecution means something that's completely baseless. Now, malicious prosecution doesn't start and end with the fact that I've been charged to court and it turned out to be baseless or malicious.
Yes.
Now, malicious prosecution is not that you were tried in court and the court found the charges baseless or unsupported by evidence. No. Malicious prosecution is a specific determination or specific combination of facts that shows that this was pointless from day one. Now, the value chain of that doesn't start with whether somebody propounded a charge against you or not. Because at the end of the day, there's prosecutorial discretion and there's prosecutorial immunity for propounding charges when you believe that there's sufficient evidence. Now, the police are victims also in a society where we as citizens can act anyhow. If you can move the hand of the police by spurious, inappropriate allegations, then you are as much part of the problem as what people allege the police is. And there have been cases like that. I remember there was a case in the US for many years of some woman who drove her children into a pond and they died. And blamed it on someone else. And because this person had a record of crime, and just look at the sheer number of cases and the number of people who have been removed from death row because somebody lied. And somebody who's come back and said, yeah, you know what, I lied. That's where malicious prosecution started. And you can say the police acted irresponsibly, but the reality is they were triggered by somebody else's conduct. Now, does this mean that citizens, including brand owners, cannot report a matter to the police? No, it doesn't. But there must be subjective, true belief that criminal conduct has occurred. Now, I say subjective because what you think may be different from what I think. But even your subjective concern about criminal conduct occurring must be subjected to an objective standard. And is that objective standard that we would use to determine if this was a sensible alarm or a false alarm, or if you were just trying to suppress dissent or opinion, which are constitutional guarantees anyway. And so that's what we got involved in with respect to the tomato mix.
You were very quick to get involved. I read how quickly you moved to the police station to see or meet with the lady in question, to see what was happening. So what was the result of your involvement?
And so what we did was to immediately send a team to the police station, and she wasn't there, but we understood she was en route to Abuja. And so we opened the communication channel with the force headquarters, and in 24 hours, I think we must have even sent maybe 2 pieces of written correspondence. I spoke with the Commissioner of Police in Lagos. I spoke with the Principal Staff Officer of the Inspector General of Police, and continued the engagement. And for us, it wasn't about whether something had gone wrong or not. It wasn't about whether her post was fair comment or not.
Yes.
It was about all the information we had satisfies us sufficiently that this wasn't criminal conduct. And the fact that it wasn't criminal conduct doesn't mean that the manufacturer would not have any remedies in the event that this was inappropriate conduct.
Yes.
But it certainly was, we just didn't think that this was something that should end up in detention or prosecution. And so that was our own engagement, and we're grateful that at the end of the day, between that and other interventions, she was released from custody.
Do you think that her apology was appropriate? Do you think perhaps she apologized under duress?
Now, so I can't say, we don't have the information. They would be coming in. I mean, when I say they, her lawyer has expressed that he would be representing her as part of our own investigation about what she said.
Yes.
Because even she is a subject of investigation based on what she said. Yes. So I can't say that yet, but it's something that we would ask her questions about. Not that that's that important to a regulatory intervention, but it's an important finding for us to be able to provide feedback to law enforcement authorities about securing the space. But I can tell you something, basically as a lawyer, that a negative review of a product, and especially when you attribute it to your own personal experience, means it's your opinion. Now, I would have said my first thing would have been her opinion was not factual if she was saying that there was any property or ingredient in the product that didn't exist. That didn't exist. Well, something about whether it ought not to be there or not.
Yes.
And so, for instance, if she said, well, she says, look, there's sugar in this product. Question is there sugar or not? If it turns out that there's absolutely no sugar in that product, then her allegation is baseless.
Yes. But if there's sugar,
and so a baseline fact. The next thing she says is it's too much. Now that's subjective. It might be too much for me and not too much for you. So it's difficult for that to ultimately become criminal conduct. But it might still be unfair or inappropriate. And so one of the things we did was to start polls and focus groups to gather information about people's opinion about the product and how they characterize the product, their views or expressions about whether there's sugar in it or how much sugar in it will form part of the objective standard by which we test her subjective opinion. And that's how the process would work. And it will end with a finding. Suffice to say, though, that to the extent that her criticism was about a product, it would be difficult to sustain a criminal defamation allegation. Because in criminal defamation, it must be the reputation of an individual. It must be a real victim, not a victim that's a brand. I mean, of course, the brand owner and all of that and the company are victims, but the law, defamation about the reputation of the company is a civil issue. It's not going to be criminal at all.
Join us again after the break. Welcome back to my concluding moments now with Babatunde Rukera. Does it make any difference that NAFDAC has actually come out to say that even though there's sugar in the product, it's not harmful? In fact, it's quite normal to have sugar as a preservative in some of these products.
Very good. Now, my worry with that is that I think NAFDAC has done the absolute right thing. And I don't think NAFDAC did it to defend a company.
No.
I think NAFDAC did it because it was important for consumers to know, and it could be misleading, people could be afraid, and to also validate this particular product that, listen guys, for those of you who are patrons of this product, don't be afraid. You're not consuming some dangerous product, and the manufacturer of this product is not engaging in illegal conduct. That was a very important message NAFDAC had to pass to both the patrons of the product and the rest of the community or society that use tomato mix. So that was an important thing. Put differently, what that also does is that it diminishes the case that the commenter's review was spurious allegation, because it validates the fact that there is sugar in the product.
Yes. All right, so the issue of tickets and trains and so many sharp practices going on. There are incidents now where people want to board the train, and when they seek tickets, they will say there are no tickets available. But you have members of the train, the staff at the railways now taking people in to the coaches and say, oh, come with me, I'll get you tickets. And then when they get there, the train starts to move, and then the staff are collecting cash from them. So, I was following this thread on my friend Shola Salako's page, and someone said, why would anyone want to pay cash? Well, the train has moved from the station. You feel obliged to pay. You don't want to be a troublemaker. You are there. You understand? So, what can people do about that?
I saw that for the first time, and what I did was to immediately contact the Minister of Transportation, who oversees the Nigerian Railway Corporation. And we're engaging already. I'm very grateful that he has even already said that he actually is on it. He responded to me and says, we're on this. And in our usual role, what we will do is, once we've catalyzed action by a more focal regulator or solution provider, we just remain oversight to monitor and see the outcome. So we look to see how this plays out.
And the thing is, it would appear to me, and I'm trying to find the right words, sometimes when government brings these ways that things can improve, especially now that we're going more digital, go online and register, go online and do something, there's a resistance from the people who run the agencies. It's like they don't want these improvements because it reduces physical engagement, interaction with the potential clients.
Which promotes graft.
Yes, thereby limiting options and opportunities for graft. What is the way forward? Because they tell you go online and register. You find that you can never register. But when you get to the office, outside these offices, you see people there with laptops and you're able to register. And this is across board. Whether you're registering for NYC, you're registering for anything, it's always so difficult to access the website. But the people who run these things are still thriving on these physical interactions.
Technology is a disruptor, and we also have to, in seeking solutions, as citizens, we must seek solutions that are sustainable. For instance, where technology fails, what we should be looking for is how to make the technology work, not to return to the old alternative that didn't work. I remember very, very many years ago in the UK, when they were transitioning from the manual entry into the trains and the underground, people used to jump over the turnstiles and everything. Now it can't happen anymore. It's a sustained, tedious, but very pedantic and stubborn approach till technology ultimately eliminates the room for those interactions that promote graft. And we're on the cusp of it rather late. So we're experiencing the associated teething problems as we must.
Yes.
What government and regulators must do is just remain determined. And what citizens must do is to understand that there are bad elements everywhere. Whether in government or on the streets, there are bad elements everywhere. And those bad elements, who are sometimes not state actors, in fact just private actors also, will always seek to frustrate a system. But if we allow that to happen, that system won't sustain. And one of the threads I read, you had someone who insisted that no, I want to go and get a ticket. I don't want to approach the train through an entrance that is not. But of course, ultimately run into trouble. So that continuing insistence. Or if I were on that train, for instance, I would have declined to pay by cash if I have a card. So, you know what? If for any reason you put me on this train and you were going to take it off and you wanted me to pay on the train, you should have had a POS.
Right.
You should have an equipment that allows me to pay cashless. Mm-hmm. And when they put it in and the receipt comes out, look at the name on the receipt. If it says Babatunde Irukera and Co, wait a minute, you can't take this away. This doesn't show that I've paid to the railway corporation.
Yes.
And so all of the policemen in Nigeria are what? How many thousand? There are 200 million of us. We must police ourselves too.
There is a tendency for people to view you as a troublemaker. You're at the airport and everyone's queuing, and then someone comes and the airport staff are taking them to the front, and then you start to talk about it, and everyone initially looks at you. Sometimes, when someone starts to react, then everyone joins in. But generally speaking, people look at you as the troublemaker. Are you not a Nigerian kind of thing?
And so a troublemaker you are. We must have a few troublemakers in any society. I mean, I'm considered a nuisance. I'm considered a troublemaker, a nuisance, an interloper, minding other people's business. What's the greatest criticism about Hiroka? I would always, he goes beyond his mandate. Even what is not his business, he gets into it. So what? And so what? I mean, and many times, just making that trouble doesn't matter that you resolve that situation. It's also an advocacy tool. It also lets others, many times some people just don't even know. Many times those who say, look, aren't you a Nigerian, feel that, look, let's not run the boat because we don't have these rights.
Yes.
And so what you're doing each time you're making trouble is also sensitization.
Educating people.
Secondly, many times people have said to me that they've written to a company or an electronic store and written them a letter saying, I bought this washing machine from you, I bought this television, it's not working, I've been trying to get you to fix it, you haven't fixed it. Then FCC, they get a call. They have not even sent out the copy. Yeah. No, they just copied me on the letter, they haven't even sent out the copy to me.
To you, okay.
Yet somebody sees it and says, oh no, why, it's no big deal, let's sort this out. And so, at the end of the day, we succeed when things go right, not when we resolve everything. And that's where we must head. We would never be able to hold every single person accountable. That's what an accountability framework is. The best framework is where one says, I do not want to even have to deal with this, so I'd rather not. And so making that trouble, somebody else is watching, just says, no, I'm not going to get involved in this. I mean, I've been at the airport where passengers were getting on rowdy and unruly with an airline operative because of a delay, and somebody sitting at the counter of the other airline goes to announce our own flight is going to be delayed also, and this is the reason, because they didn't want their own passengers to come and get rowdy. So say, look, let's just go make an announcement now.
Let them know.
Let them know. And so we're modifying behavior. I just believe that if what we consider making trouble is speaking up, but not violating the law, becoming disruptive, then it's a good thing to speak up.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Ayokera, for spending time with me today. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. I'm Angela Ajitomobi.
Businesses in Africa can be very challenging. In Nigeria, it is particularly intimidating, and successful builders have learned how to navigate a hostile environment to unlock opportunities. But one major challenge businesses face is how to filter through the noise and identify where their ideal customers exist. Get insight and practical steps from industry players and captains of industries. Hear success stories to help you make informed decisions as you scale your business in Nigeria. Watch Business Insights at this time on PlusTvAfrica.
Nigeria is a beautiful country filled with cultural resources and a preserved tradition. It is famously known as the Giant of Africa, whose cultural heritage is woven from the natural beauty in her land, threads of history, and the hospitality of her people. From rainforests in the south to savanna woodlands in the center and a semi-desert region in the north, Nigeria is adorned with long stretches of exotic beaches, lush mountains, magnificent waterfalls, and a unique wildlife, boasting of enchanting tourist attractions ready to be enjoyed. Here are some tourist destinations you should add to your bucket list. Coconut Beach. Coconut Beach is located in the coastal town of Badagry, west of Lagos State, Nigeria. No place tells the story of tourism fused with history like Badagry, which is situated about 20 miles close to the border of the Benin Republic. Coconut Beach has breathtaking and beautiful ocean views, a perfect place for relaxation, with the beach being set away from the noise of suburbia. It is surrounded by thousands of coconut trees, where it got its name from, beautiful holiday resorts, vacation huts, fresh air, and an open sky, portraying an ideal rural destination for lovers of fun and holiday makers. The Obudu Mountain Resorts. Above the sea level, on the Oshia ridge of the famous Sankwala Mountain, sits majestically the Obudu Mountain Resort. It is located in the highlands and deep tropical forests of Cross River State, with a temperate climate and just 45 miles from the border of Cameroon. The ranch boasts of numerous pleasant mountain area and countryside views, with tourist attractions like the water park, cable car, ranch cattle and horses, waterfall, and the ancient Anapi village. The Obudu Mountain Resort is a mix of adventure, beautiful scenery, and idyllic tranquility. The Yankari Game Reserve. In Bauchi State is the Yankari Game Reserve and former National Park, one of West Africa's eco-destinations. It is home to several natural warm water springs and the biggest wildlife retreat. The reserve is filled with a number of activities that would help you connect with nature. Marvel at the largest herd of elephants in the country. Embark on a guided safari tour and explore the tropical forest. You'll also find beautifully constructed huts alongside some uncaged animals such as monkeys and baboons living in their natural habitat. The Yankari Game Reserve is an area of great natural beauty that provides recreational pleasure. The Ogbunike Caves. Located in a valley blanketed by tropical rainforest in Anambra State, are a collection of caves knitted with historical and spiritual significance. The Ogbunike Caves are associated with living traditions said to be preserved by the people for many centuries. Descending into the valley where the caves are located is a walkway made up of about 317 steps, and visitors must remove their shoes before entering the caves based on tradition. The caves are beautifully surrounded by streams of water flowing out from one of the tunnels into River Nkisa. Seen as a trove for tourists, the Ogbunike Caves make an ideal destination. The Owu Waterfalls. Described as a wonder in the wilderness is the Owu Waterfalls, located in Kwara State. Cascading from a height of about 120 meters to a pool of ice-cold water, the Owu Waterfalls is one of the highest and most fascinating waterfalls to watch in West Africa. It is a beautiful scenery which can only be appreciated when explored. Experience a fine mix of awesome attractions at the Owu Waterfalls, making it a memorable haven for your next vacation. The Osun Osogbo Grove. Situated on the outskirts of Osogbo, the capital of Osun State is the Osun Osogbo Sacred Grove, a large cultural landscape of undistributed forest dedicated to Osun, the Yoruba goddess of fertility, love, water, and beauty. The grove, which spans about 75 hectares of land, is a tourist destination that has sacred shrines, sanctuaries, sculptures, and artworks. The forest contains about 400 different species of plants that are used for medicinal purposes. Classified as one of the UNESCO World Heritage Sites, this sacred forest attracts a large number of tourists, and it is definitely worth visiting. Nigeria is a beautiful land waiting to be explored, and you are encouraged to visit and enjoy this.
Hello and welcome to VOA's Red Carpet. My name is Jackson Bunganyi. Thank you so much for joining us today. On this episode of Red Carpet, we'll feature a Malawian painter's work illustrating the unbreakable bond between music and culture among Africans, an event by Mashoud Creations celebrating Black History Month, and FESPACO opens in Burkina Faso. Let's begin the show. And let's start the show with some highlights.
On the path of unity, peace and progress. Now the governor admonished citizens of the state and supporters of People's Democratic Party to remain calm and assure them that as God remains on the throne, his mandate will be preserved and protected. Now the governor said he has instructed his legal team to file an appeal at the Supreme Court. Party faithful gathered in some areas of Tudunwada Ring Road of the Jos North local government area of the state on Sunday to express the joy with musical instruments, blasting danceable tunes. Now, Edo State Deputy Governor Philip Schreiber yesterday dared his boss, Governor Godwin Basike, by unfolding his ambition to succeed him next year on the platform of the People's Democratic Party. Explaining why he threw his heart into the ring, he said that Edo needs a practical leader. Now, the 2024 session planned has been a bone of contention between Obaseki and Schreiber, who was endorsed by his ward for governor last week. Now, the governor declined to endorse his deputy, who hails from Edo North, claiming that another politician cannot be fielded by the party in succession to himself, who succeeded former Governor Adams Oshiomhole from the North District over 7 years ago. Although Schreiber has apologized to his boss and reiterated his loyalty, as his delegation or declaration of ambition may retard the reconciliation. Temporary Silver of the All Progressive Congress and his running mate in the recent Bayelsa State governorship election, Joshua Masiva, have criticized former President Goodluck Jonathan over his comment on the outcome of the election. Reacting to fellow People's Democratic Party's stalwart and incumbent governor, Daya Doris' victory, Jonathan declared that he would have relocated his mother from his home state of Bayelsa to Abuja if the APC had won. Now, Silva expressed his dismay in a post on his adding that Jonathan's comments demarcates Bayelsa State. According to him, the former president's words have lost him the respect of all true followers of Silva. Also, the Abba State government has denied report that it spent 927 million naira on the Governor Alex Oto's meals and welfare packages in 3 months. Now, the budget performance report indicated that the government spent the sum of $223 million on refreshment and meals, while 305 million naira was spent on honorarium and also sitting allowances for government officials. The special advisor to the governor on media and publicity, Ferdinand Ekoma, denied the report. Still on the news update, suspected political thugs have attacked the residence of Rivers factional speaker at the scene AE in Port Harcourt, the state capital. AE, who was removed as assembly leader during the move to impeach Governor Siminalari Fubara, later announced himself as the House Speaker. Details of the incident on AE's residence were still sketchy, but it was gathered that security details of AE for the attack. Now, a source simply identified as Ken described the attack as an assassination attempt, as alleged that the attempted assassination was led by the head of a security tactical unit in the state. He warned that some senior security officers in the state should be held responsible if anything happens to AE and his household. Moving on, 600 teachers in the Federal Ministry of Education and the Federal Ministry of Defense who benefited from the federal government service elongation package for teachers are currently being owed 23-month salaries. Now, the service elongation for teachers was introduced by the administration of former President Muhammadu Buhari. Now, the beneficiary teachers are in some of the nation's united schools owned by the military and paramilitary. Now, on January 20th, 2021, the Federal Executive Council approved a bill that sought to increase the retirement age and the service years of teachers. The then Minister of Education, Adamu Adama, explained that the essence of the bill was to give legal backing for the approval of the new retirement age of 65 from 60 years for teachers and extended their period of service from 35 to 40 years. Now, the bill, according to him, was sought to introduce a bursary, award, special rural posting allowances, and other items that would encourage brilliant Nigerians to take up teaching. And now we'll move on to other parts of Africa. South Africa has held its first major voter registration drive on Saturday in a bid to tackle widespread apathy ahead of national elections next year. Now, polling stations across the country opened their doors to let would-be voters register or check their details as part of a two-day exercise to woo electors back to the ballots after years of dwindling participation. Now, voting numbers have shrunk every 5 years since South Africans jubilantly are queued to cast their ballot in the forced democratic elections in the year 1994. At the last elections in 2019, only 49% of those of voting age showed up on election day. In 2019 also, only 15% of all eligible voters are aged 18 to 19 and as well 30% of 20 to 29 years old cast a vote.
Mostly it's about young youth because the last generation did their role. So as a youth we need to play a role for the change of the universe.
A week-long summit at the United Nations Environment in Nairobi focused on drafting a treaty to combat global plastic pollution. Over 2,000 delegates attended, with 175 countries committed to a binding agreement by 2024. However, delegates remained divided on the treaty's substance as NGOs advocate for plastic reduction, while oil-producing countries and plastic industry lobbyists advocate for recycling and better waste management. Now, the treaty will cover the entire life cycle of plastics from production to disposal.
Unfortunately, what we've seen here is a lot of circular talk catering to a few countries that are refusing to move forward. And what we need is countries like the United States and others, members from the High Ambition Coalition, to step up and show leadership so that we can get a treaty that massively cuts plastic production and protects human health. We have almost 150 lobbyists from the fossil fuel industry here trying to undermine progress and protect their right to profit with impunity at the expense of people and the planet. And I think fundamentally we have not seen the leadership that we want to see from countries that know.
Now move on to South Africa. Hamas gunmen have battered the Israeli forces trying to push into Gaza's line, close to a deal between Israel and Hamas to free dozens of women and children held hostage in Gaza in exchange for a 5-day pause in their war. Now, the Post have reported that a tentative deal had been reached, but this was denied by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and U.S. officials, with a White House spokesperson saying efforts were still continuing to clinch a deal. Now, Sunday, however, Israel's ambassador to the United States, Michael Herzog, said in an interview that Israel was hopeful a significant number of hostages could be released by Hamas in coming days. And straight to business. The governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, Dr. Olayemi Kadoso, will this weekend examine the macroeconomic direction and outlook for the Nigerian economy. A major event expected to provide guidance to key decision makers. Now, Kadoso will address bankers and other public and private sector stakeholders at the annual bankers' dinner of the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria, CIBN, in Lagos. Now, Christian, the Governor's Day, the event provides the CBN Governor the opportunity to address stakeholders on the economic and financial markets development during the year, as well as the economic outlook for the coming year. The CIBN will also hold the grand finale of its 60th anniversary celebration, underscoring 6 decades of its commitment to professionalism, integrity, innovation, and ethics in the banking and finance industry. Now, the dinner and 60th anniversary celebration is expected to draw an assembly of over 500 leaders from the banking industry, influential business leaders, and senior government officials. And straightway to sports. Super Eagles midfielder Alex Iwobi has appealed to Nigerians to exercise patience with the team, with the promise that they will do everything to qualify for the 2026 World Cup in the US, Canada, and Mexico. Iwobi and his teammates are off to a bastard in the African qualifying series with 2 points in their first 2 matches, and they were held to an uninspiring 1-1 draw by Lesotho in the year last week before forcing another 1-1 draw against Zimbabwe at adopted ground in Rwanda on Sunday. Nigeria did not qualify for the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, and following the Super Eagles' lackluster display in both games of the series, another World Cup is gradually eluding Nigerians. Still in sport, Nigeria beats Tanzania on the 20 girls at 2-1, which is at 3-2 on aggregate in the second leg of their 2024 Under-20 Women's World Cup and African Qualifying Series second round fixture at the Moshood Abiola Stadium, Abuja on Sunday to progress to the final round of qualifiers. Now, both sides are battled to a 1-1 draw in the first leg in Dar es Salaam last Sunday. The Falconets edged their counterparts 2-1 as goals from Janet and Comfort Olorisho ensured that Christopher Danjuma's girls sail to the final qualification phase. And that's the news updates. For more stories, please follow us on Facebook, X, and Instagram, and do subscribe to our YouTube channel, PlusTvAfrica and PlusTvAfrica Lifestyle. You can also view us from Limix on limix.tv and Glow TV apps anywhere in the world. I am Emmanuel Olubobokun, and thanks for watching.
Increase the reach of your events or business services. To advertise on Plus TV Africa, please call 0906 000 5719 or 0909 040 8408, or send an email to marketing@plustvafrica.com. Plus TV Africa. Big stories live here.
Tita woke up with a start. She was experiencing intense cramping in her stomach, a sign that her menstrual period was here. The severe pain made her wish sometimes she was a man. When she was still married, her period felt like a curse, showing up every month without fail, meaning that she failed at conceiving yet again that month. The singular act that would truly make her a woman kept evading her, and her potential children came out as blood clots. Thankfully, she is in a better headspace now. She carefully got out of bed, grabbed a change of underwear and a sanitary pad, and went to have a bath. She felt some relief after the bath. She reached for some ibuprofen in the drawer by her bed. As she swallowed the pills, she prayed silently, a practice that she had rediscovered recently. Dear God, you know my desire to have children. I know you're the one who placed the desire inside of me. You have formed my body in my mother's womb. Take control of my body. As she drifted back to sleep, she thought of only the future, a future she so badly wanted Ifunanya to be a part of. Bright and early the next morning, she was off to the market. She needed to get some foodstuffs for the week for both her and Ifunanya. Thank God it was the weekend. Even though she was in pain, she still had a lot of things to do that will help take her mind off it. Halfway through the market runs, the cramping became unbearable. that she had to find a place to sit. She always carried water and painkillers with her, so she quickly took some and waited for the pain to subside. An hour later, she was back home and in bed. To help with the pain, she held her trusted hot water bottle against her stomach as tightly as she was wrapped in her blanket. It hadn't always been like this. When Tito had first gotten her periods at 13 and throughout her teenage years, she hardly had any problems. By the time she reached her 20s, her periods had stopped being regular, and when she managed to get them, they came with excruciating pain. Her insides usually felt like someone was wringing a wet piece of cloth. However, in her youthful naivety, she had not worried about it because she thought it was just a phase. She soon found out the hard way that it wasn't a phase. The first miscarriage after she got married marked the start of her journey in the fight against infertility. She soon realized how much culture and tradition were stacked against her. Hi, my name is Shay Amao. I'm a brand business consultant and author and founder of PCOS Conquerors. Health was really, I was having prolonged periods, which then I didn't know it was also a side effect of PCOS. I wasn't even aware I had PCOS. But the more I look back at when I started having these issues, I realized the first time I had issues in my period was like when I was 18. And at 18, what happened was I didn't see my period 1 month. I went to see a doctor. She was a female doctor. She's an Indian woman with my mom. And basically, she all but, I don't even know, accused me of having premarital sex. And I was like, okay, first of all, I'm a young girl, fine. I know people are active and stuff, but I said I'm not active. But she didn't believe me, just basically gaslighted my experience. And then my period came the next day. So I just thought, you know, I'll never ever do that again. And once I didn't, so that for me was almost like, oh, it's like my body is now giving me a break from periods and stuff. So when it started becoming regular, like every year, because it was after 18, I started noticing I would miss my periods. I didn't pay any attention to it. And it didn't, and that was until maybe I was like 26 or so, when I started noticing my body was changing and everything. So I went to see a doctor. That was when the doctor, they didn't call up PCOS, but he was just like, okay, you're getting married soon. You know, just let's watch and see. It was always let's watch and see, nothing definitive. And even when one doctor said, okay, he was going to put me on birth control, he didn't really address my concern. I was concerned I was gaining weight. He was telling me I'll put on more weight. So obviously I was like, yeah, I don't think I need birth control. And when I finally got diagnosed, and this was like 2017, I remember the experience just being a bit horrid because the doctor, who happened to also be a childhood doctor for me, it was more like an experiment where he was, you know, just checking my stomach and then calling his nurse, or I don't even know, maybe resident doctor, to like, oh wow, like this is a classic case of PCOS. And I'm like, I'm then like going crazy because I'm like, okay, I've read the things online, it looks scary, and there was nothing done to elevate, you know, what I knew or what to do next. So the same thing was let's watch and see. So it was always let's watch and see, no active solution. To be honest, it was until I started taking some interest in my own body that I started finding out things I could do to help myself get better. People judge books by its cover. Yes, I mean, I think that was one of my biggest lessons because I just spoke about it because I knew when I picked the cover, if people don't know, some people are like, oh, they see a book, they read the back and they want to get to know it. But most people would literally judge, okay, is this something I want to read? And especially if people don't know your name, you know, your book cover does a lot more for you. I'll say, you know, maybe building your team early on, you know, yes, write the book, but then having a full team. It's not just the publishers. You need a publicist, you need a marketing strategy, really, really counting the costs because it's expensive, y'all. Well, it happened during lockdown. So I think, yeah, we're stuck at home. So that was, I don't know if I'll call it, okay, I'll call the challenge, you know, kind of getting discovered because I've never written a book before. People don't know me. So it was almost like coming into like a whole market and trying to get the message and not really knowing the process. There was nowhere I could go to be like, and I'm sure maybe there was, but I couldn't really find anything And then I did try reaching out to certain authors that, had the experience, because you think, oh, let me reach out to this woman. She might be candid enough. But yeah, I didn't really get that much feedback. Although my publishers, they did help me a great deal. I had this story. I had this story since 2018, and it wasn't until 2020 that I was able to just sit down and write it. So I think if I had a lot of guidance at the start, I would have done a lot of things different. I mean, one of the things I had to do was change my book cover, so having that kind of guidance, at least it would have known, oh, this might not work, the people might misinterpret it, that kind of thing. But I just said, you know what, I'm just going to go for it and then learn from my mistakes and just see how as I go. And that's how it's been for me. I've been figuring things as I go. I feel like I have an authentic story, and hopefully it sells itself and gains the traction. I think it's amazing. I think it's a thriving, right now, I feel like it's such a thriving market. Like, I've seen a couple of books come out recently, and I've been seeing more female authors. So initially, it seemed like something that only select people could be a part of, and then you have to, have that name before you even get to sell. But I'm seeing more people kind of break the glass ceilings with their books, like once they understand the market. So it's something like I want to get into even more. Like, I just wrote a book and I'm like, okay, cool. I wasn't thinking I was going to really delve into it. But the more I started connecting with more authors, the more people seeing their books, Dami Adetu, she has a beautiful book called Home. The more I'm like, okay, this is actually something I really want to be a part of. I started a conversation, I think during lockdown, about Publish Her, just like an initiative, just encouraging more women authors from this space. So I think it'd be good to see more people. I mean, we're already seeing it. So it's just, let's create more forums for people to dialogue and even learn more, because it's something that can take us to the world, especially if we have a great story that can be produced internationally.
Switch on light on. Pressing command to internal. Expectedly back to DW. Still same pressure. ET on 55. Your nav state with back and is perfect.
My name is Sonya Onoyoade. I reminisce my good old days with an uncommon nostalgia. For me, my days of yore were lived fully from humble beginning. Born in Bere and raised in Inolende, Ibadan, the commonality of our abode made it possible for everybody to know everybody else. So, communal parenting was prevalent, evoking the sentiment of the age-old adage that it takes a village to raise a child. So, bad behaviors could be punished by communal stakeholders other than the parents, such as neighbors, aunts, uncles, and sisters, all taking responsibility for the life and welfare of the children in the community. My parents hailed from Modakeke, but raised all their children in Ibadan. My early beginning revolved around Inolende, where I spent my infancy, and which harbored Ebenezer Primary School that I attended. It was a life of school and football, kite flying and sand dunes molded from a foot stuck into the sandy ground. Okoto was a plaything, just like Agbalumo seed. My primary school lay parallel to Iguagala, which housed the iconic colonial-era Bowers Tower, a high-rise rotunda with spiral tiers set on a hill and which played host to visitors and tourists and could be seen from every nook of the ancient city. A saying dedicated to this tower against those not conversant with the complexity of the city is Ibadolomo or Molayipo, meaning that you only know Ibadan but not the Bowers Tower, which locals called Layipo due to its rotunda nature and because you have to climb up its zenith in a spiral stairs. Inolende was communal by every sense of it. Every naming ceremony or traditional wedding, freedom from apprenticeship or sundry events did not require formal invites. Such events were for the community and children were expected to attend, huddled together in a choreographed manner around large bowls of rice, as a couple of gazing sheep and bleating goats waited in the wing to pounce on leftovers. Muslim and Christian festivals were actively celebrated by all, irrespective of religious lineage. Ramadan was a time we looked forward to as children of Christian faith because we would wake up to eat sahari, and some evenings were filled with itinerant musicians who played were, a Fuji genre with Islamic lyrical underpinnings. Sikiru Ayinde, later called Barrister, was a regular team lead in the locality in those days. Will I forget the good old days of Egungun festivals when we followed Ololu or Alakpanshopa or Atikpako, all dreaded masquerades from Inolinde to Bere and Makbo, sucking in their superlative acrobatic displays and guttural incantations. Young folks, especially those from humble background like me, found the serendipity of Ibadan around the 70s and the 80s. Odo Dandaru, a stream on the fringe of Mokola, was our swimming bay, and the elevator of Kingsway in Dugbe was our playground. Except for Cocoa House and a couple of high-rise buildings, the skyline was not dotted with skyscrapers, yet the serenity of Ibadan was profound and the security unimpeachable. Family values were strong in my good old days. During school holidays, we would follow our father to his farm in Idiya, a village settlement in the outskirts of Ibadan. Farms were not an attractive sector to kidnappers or armed robbers then. It was fun in the farm, making small fires to roast corn or yam or rabbit caught by midnight traps. In the twilights of the day, while going back to the village from the farm or sitting around the fireplace in the village hut, Father would regale us with stories of life, wisdom nuggets and politics of yore. It was in one such sitting I knew the plant called Akintola Taku, so named because of the political crisis of the 60s. At other times, we followed Mother to Dugbe Market, where she traded in stockfish. I went to Ibadan Polytechnic, Ogun State Polytechnic, and the University of Ibadan. And in my trajectory, educational value was in the quality. Handphones and other modern gadgets of pleasure were few, so there were less distractions. There was nobility of character among students and lecturers. Cultism, sex for marks, student prostitution, and absenteeism were only hush words, unlike now that those vices are threatening the survival of the academia. Our children need to know how we roll back in the days and begin to invent a more quality life. They deserve better today and brighter future, so that they can also have their own good old days in the fullness of time. I believe we need collective efforts to ensure that we make the difference in the lives of our youth now for a better tomorrow. That is why I am joining Sir Shemore Badijo in this patriotic drive. How about you? Won't you rather join us? Thank you.
Now, technical and vocational education and training systems in many low and middle income countries do not match skills and labor market needs and are unprepared to meet the large rise in demand for TVET in the coming years. But that's according to a new joint study by the World Bank, the International Labour Organization, and the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO. Also, in line with UNESCO's Sustainable Development Goals 1 and 10, which are to eradicate poverty and reduce inequality by 2030, inclusive technical, vocational education and training (TVET) has been observed as one of the ways to achieve participation and inclusion of most Nigerians in legal and meaningful profit-oriented activities to earn their living, eradicate poverty, and combat insecurity. On the show today, we'll focus on the determinants of the labor market situation of young people in Nigeria, with a particular emphasis on rethinking the role of technical education, vocational training, and education policies. Welcome to Business Insight on PlusTvAfrica. I am Justin Akadonia. First off, empowering Nigerians for the demand of workplace and self-reliance will reduce the unemployment rate, especially among the youth. Now, this was the position of a group, the Eagle Foundation, at its one-day Work Skills, Employability and Entrepreneurship Program. Details in this report. The nation's higher educational institutions equip graduates with hard skills while neglecting the development of employability skills, which are core for transitioning into the labor market as well as for workplace productivity. The lack of these skills in graduates keeps them in the pool of the unemployed, no matter their degree of certification. Now, Executive Director, Eagle Foundation, Toluwaṣe Olaniyan, says this project aims to equip participants with the right skill set for employment and also prepare them for the world of entrepreneurship.
A good number of young people are currently not unemployed, they're able. And this is because they lack the basic skills like critical thinking, problem solving, those skills that can help them perform in the labor market. So employers are not getting what they want from them. Unfortunately, they're able to employ them. And after the flag off of this project, we're setting up mentoring and coaching centers across different institutions where students are able to speak to coaches and are able to have continuous career development sessions so that it doesn't just end here.
One of the unique aspects of this training is to provide access to jobs for selected participants and also expose them to the realities of the workplace.
Employability is an important part of our economic growth, because when the people of the nation or the society are employed, productivity is increased as a country, and the GDP of the country also thrives on productivity.
A way forward is for people to actually consider a lot of capacity building trainings. The four walls of an academic institution is not going to provide all the kind of knowledge and skills you need. You have to self-develop, self-train yourself through taking part in trainings, capacity building, and the likes.
There are several causes of graduate unemployment in Nigeria, including an inelastic labor market to absorb the turnover. Some of the participants share their thoughts.
Still by skill acquisition, because most of the most companies now, I don't know how to put that in English, they don't really want to employ more because technology is already taking over lots of jobs now.
With the help of writing a good CV, because majority of us, I think the reason why we are not seeing good jobs is because of not you can't write good CVs. So with this program now, so they are teaching us how to write good CVs on how to get good jobs.
Another way to address the challenge of employability, skill-induced employment, is to incorporate the learning of these skills in the curriculum of higher education. Welcome back from that feature on unemployment. In the context of rapidly changing labor market and evolving skills needs due to globalization, technological progress, demographic transformation, and climate change, the need for well-performing TVET is even greater to ensure smooth job transitions. This is especially critical as global youth unemployment stands at 16% in 2022, much higher than the overall unemployment rate. These averages mask large disparities across countries, particularly in low and middle income countries. My guest, Toluwaṣe Olaniyan, is a notable executive coach, business strategist, and an experienced human capital professional. His over 15 years experience in human capital development spans across learning and development, talent acceleration, talent management, and placement. Over the years, he has built a strong capacity in process, project, and people management, and has an impressive track record of working with leading brands across multiple countries, including the United States, Canada, the UK, and Africa. He joins me now as we rethink TVET in Nigeria as a lasting solution to unemployment. Many thanks for joining me, Tolu.
Thank you so much for having me here, Justin.
Well, it is my pleasure. Let's start this way. Just yesterday, you and I were just having a pre-chat concerning this thing, and it's as though the present administration has its eyes on TVET as a way of maybe improving the unemployment situation in the country. It used to be like a thing in the past that did we lose track somehow in any way?
Well, yeah, I mean, so thanks, Justin. I think that we actually lost track at some point, right? I mean, so TVET, vocational education used to be like a big deal. So which was some of the things that gave birth to organizations like NAPTEB, where you could easily, instead of going to a secondary school, you could go to a vocational and a technical school and could graduate being like, someone who is skilled in a technical skill, and you can then get into the labor market as such. But I think that we then lost, which also strengthened like polytechnics and all, right? But then I think somewhere along the line we lost it. Maybe also for higher preference placed on university education, we then make a lot more people clamor to, to gain university degrees, which has probably now put the university degree a bit above other technical institutions. So I think we probably lost it at that point, which is also very sad and worrisome.
Okay, but right now you will agree with me that we are witnessing unprecedented inequalities within countries, especially when we talk about women, men, and of course youth unemployment. But in your opinion, do you really think TVET is like a panacea to these issues of rising unemployment, specifically amongst the youth?
Well, yes. I absolutely would say yes, right? So TVET is the pathway now, right? Is a strategic pathway into the fast rising rate of unemployment, right? So think about it this way: we have a whole lot of people who probably had studied a particular course in university and are looking to practice or to earn a living based on what they have studied, right? But then you could flip it. We have shortage of well-experienced plumbers. We have shortage of carpenters who can do these things, and we can even export the skills, right? But then we have a lot of people who just want to go the other route of looking for a white-collar job. And like I say every time, the color of the job is gradually changing. It's fast changing, right? And we then need to be able to then help build the technical vocational space so that it can accommodate a whole lot of people, right? Also build structures and systems in place to support artisans and their businesses, right? So it's very tough for you to see a tailoring outlet that has more than 2 branches, even in a state. So have you seen a mechanic workshop that has an outlet in Lagos and has in Ibadan and has in Shagamu or has almost everywhere, right? So it means that because of the less attention paid to skilled labor, they are not getting as much support, is reducing their capacity to be able to absorb as much people, right? But then if you then put a lot of energy on building the TVET space, so it will be a full value chain where we'll also be supporting like the SMEs who will be absorbing these people and once they are done. So you can see a mechanic workshop that's absorbing about 3-4 graduates, and they are all working. They're all working well. So this person has like branches in 4 other states. It means this mechanic business, who is hiring just 2 people now, has the potential of hiring 22 people if strengthened and if adequate attention is placed on this skill.
Okay, let's talk what more can be done to encourage TVET. You talked about, in passing, there's a preference for university education as opposed to the monotechnics and the polytechnics. We also have the NBTE, I was in NAPTEB.
NAPTEB, yeah.
Okay, and all of that. But in your opinion, do you really think it is well positioned to, handle all of the issues concerning human capital development, vocational and technical education? Because back in the day, even as at the secondary level, we even have vocational training in schools.
Yes. Oh, okay. So, what I said, right? I've said this at different for, is we need a stronger legislation, right? That perfectly would equate and standardize all of the degrees across board, right? So a university graduate is not earning more than a polytechnic graduate, right? So it makes it a clear alternative for these people. There are some courses and there's some courses that people who are graduated from a technical school, a technical secondary school, can probably not apply to in the university, also for like basic disparity. But we need is a stronger legislation to equate and standardize all of this, right? And also we need like a higher level of standardization, right? Around it, I mean, NSQ that we're currently having, which is like National Skills Framework, that says, oh, if you're done with an OND, right, you're probably at this skill level, and you can be hired by a company on this level. Now, OND graduates are largely just hired as IT people. Oh, just come after they're done with IT. There's no strong standardization to say, oh, this is where you are. So you see a lot of them, instead of owning the skill and working on the role that they've been hired to, they are instead seeing themselves as not sufficient, or until I go get an HND before I'm able to. Meanwhile, they could actually stay on the job for another 6 months. Maybe like 3 years.
Yes.
Do a recertification exam, and they can then say, oh, they've matched the standard of people who now have an HND, because they now have OND plus 3 years work experience, right? So now the challenge that we've been having over time is someone with OND and with 3 years work experience is still seen as just an OND holder.
After all the experience that he
after the 3 years experience, right? And the person with straight OND and then went for HND is seen as a higher degree holder.
No experience per se.
With no experience per se. So standardization is now a challenge that we're battling with. But if we can work around all of this, so the person takes a recertification exam, or certification exam, recertification exam, and it is a continuous certification process that helps us through the experience path, right? It will then help a lot of people move from the unemployed space into, because a lot of people are currently unemployed now because they feel OND is not enough. They don't have the finance to go for HND, so they're just at home, and they account for the high number of unemployed people that we have in the country.
Okay, let's talk about these trainings per se, because we know that TVET has a very high potential. Over time, all we see is that we have pockets of companies or groups, doing vocational trainings for people just to give them work skills and all of that. But sometimes what we find out is that some of these technical colleges that we have, they tend to teach what they think the people need as opposed to the reality of what they actually need. So how do we go around all of that?
Oh, okay. So like I always advocated again, we need to do a proper synergy of the town and gown, right? So the gown, which is like the institution, the academic space, I think that the curriculum, like I've always said, is a bit outdated. So there needs to be a proper synergy between the institutions and the workplace, facing reality, understanding that, hey, this is the current market trend, this is the current market expectation. I was on a panel last week. I know what the panelists were saying. It said there is only one institution that has an almost updated fashion or textile design department or course. Almost updated. And that almost updated is about maybe like 15 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Right. And there is an ongoing trend. So I most likely would not hire a stylist who has just graduated from that university into my fashion company, because I feel that this person is out of touch, right? Oh, but then I would hire this person. This person had maybe gone to a school, but I had then gone to a well-known fashion house to get trained. So it means that we need to bridge the gap and put institution and and the workplace together, understanding what are the needs in the labor market, what are like the requirements, how can we bring town and gown together. So all of the polytechnics, all of the polytechnics, all of the institutions have professionals, not academics, right? Professionals take specific courses that can help these people build better skills, right? So my brand had just trained about 100 people in traditional textile design, right? I mean, we've done this with a professional. We did not bother to ask what school did you graduate from. Participants and beneficiaries of this program, which was free, now earn a minimum of 70 to 100,000 every month, right? This is irrespective of what your academic background
is. So emphasis should not really be on the paper qualification per se.
Yes, right. Yes. So this is, I mean, not boardroom, because we take you through the full course of traditional textile design, how to make adire, how to make batik, how to do like all of those things, and we walk you through through the full length of business exposure, marketing, like digital marketing. So we want to be sure that you can run a full business, right? And then we provide support to you and your employees on a going concern. These are the things, and that's why institutions abroad have research grants that allows them to do research, and people from industries can come tap into these researchers. I think that our institutions also need to open up their doors to a lot more professionals come in to provide
I was going to
support.
say that because you in your own light can only just do so much as an Ego Foundation and pockets of others that we have. But then how do we, what can be done to tackle the factors that affect performance of TVET, specifically access, quality, equity, and relevance?
So I'll start with the last one, relevance. I can also ask, how many people would agree for their children after the secondary school to say that, I think I want you to go learn automobile.
I would.
To go learn automobile repair, right? Yeah. So even from the home, right, a lot of people have not come to accept, not come to agree to TVET. So we need to first increase awareness for the acceptance of this, which is like advocacy, and ensure that we make it as relevant as possible. People come to take it, right? And then second is, while we're increasing relevance, we're then also increasing acceptance, right? To say that people can then take this in, begin to accept it, and then those are like the foundation. That's like what we need. That's like the foundation. Once that is out of the way, people see it as a normal thing. So you don't look down on a mechanic or that is a mechanic. A lot of mechanics mechanics are very rich people, right? I'm sure they earn maybe more than some of us who work. Inside
9 to 5. I know.
Yeah, 9 to 5, right? So I think when we first increase advocacy, work around acceptance, people accepting it, ensure that it is as relevant as possible. So it then gives birth to, or gives lead to all of the other conversations around how to
equity to ensure that it actually fair to both sexes as it is.
So and I think that so the commission is getting bigger. There are lady mechanics everywhere now who also on board just women to train them in these different skills, right? And I can say most times women have a higher capacity to learn most of those skills and learn well. I think the challenge sometimes is access for them, right? How are they able to access this? What kind of design, what kind of structures have been designed to help them, right? To be able to, because we know that, they are also at home, they need to do a few things on the home front to support their families. Are we able to build like structures that allows this? So for most of our trainings, we end at a particular time, because we know that these women would say, I want to go get my kids. We're in Africa. The women provide heavy support to the home system. So we sort of make room for that to allow them also be able to function well at home.
Right.
Yes. So I think that the commission is getting bigger for women, and women are beginning to embrace like most of the skills a whole lot more.
All right, my people are actually asking me to rush out of the studio, but I want to say a very big thank you to you, Toluwaseun Olaniyan, Toluwaseun Olaniyan is the founder of Eagle Foundation, and his organization helps with employability skills and, of course, workplace skills, so that Nigerian youths, women, and, of course, everyone inclusive can actually have the skills to be honed, so they can even be their own bosses over time. Thank you once again for your time.
Thank you so much, Justin.
All right, as we wrap up, stakeholders have called for effective regulation in the e-commerce space to ensure profitability and sustenance of active players. This formed the major thrust of this course at the unveiling of an e-commerce platform, Okari Market Hub, in Lagos. I'll leave you with details of that report. I am Justin Akadonia. I'll see you again next time. Bye for now.
Coexisting together with commerce. Everybody's comfortable.
The Nigeria e-commerce market size is expected to grow from $7.63 billion in 2023 to $13.34 billion by 2028 at a compound annual growth rate of 11.82% during the forecast period. Over the years, the market has experienced significant growth driven by increasing internet penetration, growing smartphone usage, and a rising middle class with disposable income. As the industry continues to blossom, there is an increasing need to make available online stores to cater to the demand of its ever-growing market. Despite the expansion and growth of e-commerce transactions in Nigeria, the sector suffers the challenges of comprehensive regulation.
It's been tough, but quite essential. Back when we started, getting dispatch to give you a steady rate to use so that you could pass on was new to them. They wanted us to order per transaction. Today, it's commonplace. I think the regulators are catching up, right? And this is what happens in most innovative sector areas.
If you regulate an industry, you stifle the industry. So I think people should just regulators should allow businesses to run effectively. What will stand them out is customers' feedback.
While new entrants make their way into the e-commerce space regularly, stakeholders believe that a focus on bulk marketing is key. Security of transacting online remains a huge concern, just as the authenticity of products purchased poses a cause of distrust for consumers. What is the way out?
We want to do it differently. We want to satisfy bulk customers. We don't want to go on retail, bulk breaking, so to say. We want to sell in bulk, so that we'll be able to pass on the price advantage to our clients, to our customers. So if you look at the e-commerce space in Nigeria, there are no prominent bulk sellers.